I think men are struggling because of that. The thing I said that women have. I don't see herd mentality as masculinity. So I think in my mind, I feel like being a man is being okay with being the black sheep in a field of white, because men lead. And if you're just going to be part of the group and you're not okay with addressing the negative, you're not okay with evolving, then you're just going to be part of the herd, and then who's really leading?
That's why we see relationships struggling, is because the relationship one has with themselves. And I think for me, like during a point of my life, is I had probably met some of the best people ever, but those relationships struggled because I hated myself.
Okay.
And that's true. You can't give someone what you don't have.
100%.
No. Hello guys, and welcome to the Just to Kick It is a Blessing podcast. Welcome to the podcast where it's all about time, where we teach, inspire, motivate, and entertain through the art of storytelling. Today, I have a special guest in studio with me. So without further ado, I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Keith. Hi, guys. My name is Eli Mwenda. Really happy to be here. I think we've had a conversation about this happening for over 2 years. Over 2 years, yeah. So I'm so glad I finally got a chance to come to your platform. So thanks for having me. Eli Mwenda. I'm a man, a son, friend, colleague, content creator, entrepreneur, and podcaster as well.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for, gracing the invite. Honestly, when I got into the space, you were one of the people that I wrote that I have to have on the podcast, Because I remember listening to your podcast and I was like, damn, that guy, he's someone to look up to,
Thank you, bro.
And then we spoke together at a function in Strathmore.
Yeah, wow.
Yes.
It was that long ago? Okay,
That was a while back,
Yeah.
And I remember asking my bro, like, did I sound as good as these guys when they spoke on stage? Because I think that was my first function like that.
Right.
But I was so inspired and motivated about how eloquent you guys are. And you're just that translation from thinking to words, So thank you so much.
I appreciate you.
What made you start by first defining yourself as a man, a son, and a friend?
I practiced. No, I'm joking. No, I think I was having a conversation recently where, and we'll get into it. So there's a thing that happens in Japan when someone introduces themselves.
Yes.
And they always say that I am Eli of X company.
Okay.
Right. And then so I had a conversation about what are you rather than what are your labels. And so I think that's why I wanted to start from like human to the people that I care about the most, then everyone else that I offer something to.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the rationale.
No, because I even remember there's also a time someone introduced himself like that. I think we sat on a table and everyone went around introducing themselves.
Yeah.
And he came then, he's like, I'm a leader and a winner. And we all asked him, what do you mean that? Because he's a father, he's married, and he's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And he's like, all those other labels can be taken away from me. 100%. But my mindset, which I've defined as a leader and a winner, can't be taken anywhere from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy.
That's profound. I might use that one instead. It's quicker.
Even though I'm also trying to think, what's my mindset? Adjectives like that.
Yeah.
Because I say like I'm a podcast host, but one day maybe this could be taken away from me.
100%.
So that stops being my identity. But what's something that could stick with me?
100%, yeah. And I think there's a power in how you say things out loud about yourself as well, because you can get so wrapped up in like, I'm an accountant. And it's like, okay, like you said, if the accountant goes, are you losing all of your identity, all of your purpose, and then motivation? So yeah, there's definitely power in how you articulate who you are. Yeah.
And I think what also happens is, when you lose something that clearly defines you, it could send you into a slump.
100%.
And that's what you see when someone has had this job for 20, 30, 40 years and then he loses it.
Yeah.
You're like, how did someone deteriorate so quick?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but onto your podcast, what inspired you to start such an amazing podcast?
Thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
I think I was starting to do things online and I was lacking the purpose we're talking about. And I realized that because I was just posting fashion content, I wasn't feeling that element of fulfillment. So my background is I grew up in the UK. Then when I came to Kenya, I realized I was having so many deep conversations with guys that were frustrated that there wasn't a platform, there wasn't honesty, there was a lot of toxic masculinity happening. And I was very blessed to be in an environment from like my father and friends where that wasn't the case. And the contrasting conversation I was finding made me think, okay, this is happening in a controlled setting, like 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
What if it was online, and what if it was giving me more purpose than just posting outfits? And so just the way life works, I started having a conversation with somebody that owned a barbershop location. He had the same thing where he said, guys that come to the barbershop, the deepest conversation they have that week is during their haircut, rather than with their friends and family. But he can come to the barber and say, this is happening, X, Y, Z. Then someone on the other chair goes, really, that happened to me as well. So he had the same urge and passion. So he said, okay, let's have a talk about it. And then another person, Martin Kimadi, he was a television host, and he had the same thing. He wanted to speak to men because he was doing Teen Republic at the time. Okay. So he wanted to speak to young people, but in a more profound way rather than just music. So it started with 3 people that had the same kind of vision. We were shooting episode 2, and I bumped into now my co-host, Oscar, who walked into our meeting and just said, oh, hi to now our mutual friend. Then he basically said, he was like, what are you guys up to? We gave him the vision, what we're doing. And he said, if you ever need a guest, then I'd love to come on. So our first shoot day, Oscar decided to come, and he was the best guest we had. And just as things went on, me and him connected so much, and we were just bonding at such a fast pace, and we realized our ideals and our mindset aligned so much in our goal that it ended up being that we kind of transcended the group and ended up doing it now individually on our own, because our goal was way more aligned than as a 4.
Yeah.
And so as things have gone on, the idea was kind of proved by the kind of conversations we had after the podcast with young men. So I think the motivation started with, I don't know what's going to happen, but I just want to put this out there. And then I found the tribe, and then now a few interactions have made me keep going with Oscar, where we're sat down planning the season and a young man comes up to us with like a baby stroller. And similar to how you said, you heard us speak and you're like, that resonated.
Yeah.
This father came up to us once during a time when we were like, is it touch and go? Are we going to keep going?
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm so glad you're creating a space that when my son grows up, there's something he can watch.
Oh.
Had other conversations where some guys have come up to us and said, I was in a very lonely place, having some very dark thoughts. The podcast helped me. And so it went from this idea, put it out there, to now having specific references as to why we do it. So the why has changed, and I know it's going to change as we go down the line, but that's where we're at now. Like, we're doing it for the 5 people that change because of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you look at it, what's your vision for ManTalk? Because now you've said the why, but like the current vision, like you said, that could change, but what do you envision it to be?
That's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 elements, right? So I think you can sometimes get caught up in the ideal of philanthropy and like, wanting to save the world.
Yeah.
But also there's a business aspect as well, right? Yes. And I don't want to just keep it all fluffy.
Yeah.
We're a production company, ultimately. And ManTalk is the first product that we're testing everything with myself and Oscar as the first hosts. The idea and the goal of ManTalk is to make it more than a pod, but to make it a production studio that puts out more positive content, that even if me and Oscar are not on the chair, some other young guys from the next generation are on the chair. And they're not just having the same convos, but just having something that is positive media going out there. At the moment, we're working on a progressive media campaign with a partner, and we're seeing that a lot of these brands, they want to put money behind positive platforms. And so we want to do it where, yes, the ideal is growing, but the business is also growing, and you can only reach more people with more money, ultimately, right?
That's true.
Yeah, so you can't shoot this without cameras, you can't shoot this without location. So sometimes, people forget that that's a part of it. So I want to build both with my co-host and my business partner to the point where there's African conversations from young men that are not just within the continent or the country, but it's globally, and it doesn't have to be our voice specifically. So ManTalk is the beta test, and I want it to be more products underneath the RevGen umbrella, which is the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the part for most men have tough conversations in barbershops, So in fact, like a few weeks ago, last week, someone who owns a barbershop sat there and he was like, it's crazy to see that these days a lot of young boys are being brought to the barbershop by either drivers or moms.
Wow, really?
And I was like, that's a crazy start.
Yeah.
But so now what do you think? Because you see, you were saying that's now the deepest part a man would have a conversation.
Yeah.
Now what happens to these young men?
I think the issue he's seeing is like either absent fathers or fathers that are present, but they don't see that as a core memory or like a core task. I'm not a father, so I can't really speak to it too much, but I think the menial tasks sometimes they do get offloaded to women. And in my opinion, as a son, not as a father, some of my core memories are when my dad took me to a barbershop.
Exactly.
One of them, my sister's in the studio, she'll laugh. So I went through a phase where I was like 15 and I can't remember which celebrity. I think it was Usher. He had a mohawk, right? So this guy thought, okay, Usher has a mohawk. I naturally have to have a mohawk. And I come from a Christian household and that doesn't fly in the Christian household. So I remember my barbershop versus where I live was like 45 minutes. So I remember I saved my money. I got on the train. I went, I got the haircut. I came back on a Saturday. We had church on Sunday. He was like, you're not going to church with that haircut. He drove me back. He sat me in the chair and he was like, get rid of this mohawk. Now to the barber. And those kind of moments, you can laugh about them now. But just knowing that your dad cares enough to do that drive, even though you're resenting it at that moment, those kind of core memories, I think, are so important. I think it's a case of present fatherhood. And in terms of now the conversation not happening apart from being in the barbershop, I think that's now to do with your tribe as a man. I think a lot of the time, and I said this on the last episode, when you're having quite a large group of friends, you distribute your emotions and connections on a very watered down level. So you'll find that, yeah, he's my boy, but we only meet up if 2 other people are there because we don't talk about anything more than the game, girls, and fashion or the next trip.
Yeah.
But I feel like what's maybe needs to happen, in my opinion, what's happened to me more like is that my group of friends have become way smaller and the kind of life experiences we're having are paralleling. And so it's gone from, can't even count my friends on 2 hands, I need my toes as well, to now I can count them on maybe 1 hand. But the depth of the connection I have with these 5 people means that when I'm talking to them about life, it's not just on a surface level and it's not just, we're using each other to escape what's really happening. And we're using events or we're using outings or social settings to just be around someone so we don't have to be with ourselves and have those moments. And what's happened with now being able to be with my friends is I'm not by myself anymore because when I'm having those dark moments, I can now call them. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the reason guys are having to lean on their barber is because maybe they're leaning on too many friends in a shallow way and they're not having those deeper connections where, and men are creatures that like to follow each other, right? So I think when one guy is vulnerable, the others kind of follow. Yeah, and I think maybe in a group of 10, not one of them has got the confidence to maybe say like, guys, I was feeling this way the other day. Did you guys go through this? I think that's the problem when it comes to the barbershops.
But now let me ask you, because there's probably someone listening to this and they're like, how do you form such deep connections? Like for you, because even for me, when I look at it, probably from like 16 to about maybe like 26, I think I struggled with that, trying to have a lot of friends, you know, trying to be that popular guy, you know. But then when I look back at it, my friendships were so shallow.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, but like nowadays, I can literally like count my friends on. Yeah. And people still tell me, oh, you have so many friends. And I'm like, not really. Those are acquaintances.
Yeah, acquaintances for sure. Yeah. So how have I been able to foster those relationships? So I don't think it was a very conscious effort. I think life makes you transcend environments. I was lucky to move country. And so and I've typically in my life moved from different counties, different areas. So I'm used to starting again. And I'm used to the idea of arriving and creating bonds quickly. And I've been similar to you. I was I don't know if it's a blessing, but a gregarious person where people were typically drawn to be my friend. And that came from just being the only black guy in my environment where everyone's like, okay, I want to be friends with this guy, or I played sports, I want to be friends with this guy. And I think when you have it young, where you have so many friends like yourself, you start to realize that there is a sort of emptiness. There is a sort of, you have those little moments where you're like, I can't call anybody on my phone book. I think that realization came because of moving so many times. I remember when I moved to Kenya 6 years ago, this is where I had quite a conscious effort to form better male relationships, because I remember one day I called my dad and my family had come to visit me and then they'd gone back. So now it was just myself in an apartment on my own. And it was a weekend and I don't like asking people for things. In terms of, I don't want to ask for company. I prefer somebody to invite me and then I'll turn up. And I remember feeling so lonely on this weekend. I was like, I have all these friends, but there's no one that I really want to see. And everyone that I really want to see is back home in the UK. So I called my dad and I remember having like, the wobbly voice. Yeah. I was like, Dad, I'm just like lonely. And he was like, okay, so the fact is, if something happened to you right now, you'd call home, but you wouldn't call somebody in the city. Yeah. And he was like, you need to evaluate your circle, right? So then I realized that because I had that leadership quality, I was like, why don't I use that leadership quality to actually foster these relationships and then lead my friends to be more vulnerable? So, like I said, it came from not too conscious until it was critical. And then when I did that, I started opening up to my friends. And I found because I had the podcast as well, guys felt that gateway to have deeper convos off the bat. So it started maybe with Oscar, it started with my boys back home. But now even my kind of newer friends that have come into my circle, we'll go for brunches together and we'll have real convos like, how are you actually? Like, don't just tell me business is good, XYZ. Like, how are your emotions? How are you physically? How are you spiritually? And what's happened in the last maybe 3 months is because we've already had those conversations now with my closest friends, is we're honest with what we're actually going through. And so we're seeing that we're going through the same thing. But if you're not honest about what you're going through, you'll assume he's fine. He'll assume you're fine. You're both not fine, but you're not talking about it and you're just struggling alone. So what I found is, like, last week on Friday, my friend called me, he's going through something at the moment. And he called me to ask, like, I'm going through this. I know you have too. Is it weird that I just started crying last night? And there's about 4 friends that will talk to me and say that they've cried. And so he called me, he's like, yeah, I just broke down crying. And I could immediately say, like, bro, that happened to me 2 weeks ago. Of course, like, it's fine. And so I think it's just been like beta testing. Like, I put my foot there and I talk about it, then he does it, and we're like, oh, it's okay. One other transformative moment that kind of encouraged me to be more vulnerable is one of my friends, and it's to do with crying again, one of my friends last year, he'd gone through something really, really tragic. And it was a Monday morning, and I remember he called me and he couldn't like articulate what he was saying. And he just said, like, bro, can you just come down to where I am? And I remember canceling my morning, going there and just like holding him as a bro as he just like wept. And I was so inspired by the fact that he was confident enough to call me. And so from that moment, as soon as he was vulnerable, we found that our conversations, yeah, how are you, XYZ, but immediately we jump into, okay, what's happened this week? Let's just sit down for lunch and just talk. And I think that's something that we can really learn from women because they do that all the time. They'll have extensive convos, bro, about actually everything. Yeah. You found the same thing?
No, I'm laughing at it because, like you said, women have these conversations all the same time. I was reading something the other day and they were like, it takes like way shorter time for a woman to get over a man than for a man to get over a woman.
Facts.
Because the woman will sit down, call all her friends, talk the most shit about you,
100%.
and deal with it.
And just get it out. 100%.
For a man, every time you want to talk about it, they say, now, bro, let's take 3 shots of tequila. Let's forget about this. And it never, whatever.
Yeah.
But I also applaud you for what you've done because I've been through the same thing with one of my friends, but I was on the other side. And I just called him and I told him, bro, like, honestly, I need someone.
Yeah.
And I remember he came and he picked me up and we drove all the way past the airport and we said no word. All I did was just cry.
Wow.
But by the time I came back to now this side of the city, I felt so much, relief. Yeah. And the only thing he just kept on telling me is like, bro, if you talk about hurting yourself or anything, I'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
But the rest, do whatever you want.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Because we bottle it up so much, bro. And like, and as soon as you have the relief you felt, I think it's because we'll be in our head, we'll have a really tough night, but then we'll pretend we're good in the morning. So it never goes anywhere unless you release it. And I think that's why the ladies do get over men quicker because they've released it, they've been angry, they've gone through the processes, they've been upset. And they're like, okay, cool, now I can see objectively. And there's not that small piece of pain that they've not addressed. Yeah. I was literally in my therapy session yesterday. Yeah. And this is one of the things she said. She said, like, there's an element of toxic positivity I think we can sometimes have as men where we're motivated and like, no, we'll just push it to the side. I need to make money. I need to elevate myself. And one of the final things I'm working on in real time as of yesterday is trying to, because I've healed from a lot of pain that I've been through, but there's this small element where I've wanted to get over it quicker than maybe I'm feeling. So that kind of disconnect where I'm like, I need to push through today. So I can't address that yet. But what she was saying to me is like, even in that moment, if you need 5 minutes, you'd rather go deal with it for 5 minutes, then the next day it's 1 minute, next day it's 30 seconds, and it finally releases. So yeah, those convos and those moments, they're really key, in my opinion.
You've talked about therapy so many times and you continue to share your journey about therapy.
Yeah.
What's that? What's motivated you to do that? A lot of people are scared to actually go to therapy, forget even sharing about therapy. So, you've taken the first step to go and then you've constantly say that, look, may I go for therapy? And I think it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. What's the idea? What's motivated you?
So I think it was, in theory first, I knew it was positive. And it's the same, I parallel it to knowing I need to go to the gym. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, I need to be fit, so I need to go to the gym for my body, right? And I've done that for over a decade, and that's been a staple in my life. the therapy part, I used to talk about it in theory, but I'd never taken the step up until maybe 2 years ago. And it was always that thing where I'm going to go, but I'll tell people it's positive, but I haven't gone yet. So then when I finally went, I realized it's a challenge. And I think if men maybe looked at it as a challenge rather than like, I don't know, whatever they're looking at it as, look at it as a challenge, because when you go there, do you go to therapy yourself?
Yeah, I've been to therapy a couple of sessions.
Did you feel physically drained afterwards?
No.
Okay. How many
I went for like 2 sessions, but it's because I kind of, it's the ones for you want to hear what someone wants to tell you.
Okay.
So it's not even the real one. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was the one for like, I had gone through like heartbreak, so I was trying to feel better about myself. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it wasn't the real reason, or it wasn't a good reason to go.
Okay, but that's also okay. Like having the convo about needing affirmation, right? So the reason I say look at it as a challenge is because you go to the gym because you want to get exhausted, you want to work out and build your physical muscles, right?
Yeah.
What I found with therapy, and this is why I keep going and keep advocating, is you arrive, and I think I always say do about 5 sessions. Then you kind of get the groove.
Yeah.
You arrive, and it kind of opens up so many pockets in your brain. If you look at like a house in your brain, and opens so many doors that you'd never even known were there. And once you start to explore it, it goes to like another room. And as you keep going through the house, you realize like there's all this stuff that I've just not cleaned out. And so what I found with therapy is there were so many tedious links to things. And ultimately I was like, okay, if I address this pain that came from feeling ostracized when I was 13, then now when I'm in a business meeting and I start to feel a trigger, I've already dealt with it. So I'm going to react better in my adult life. So that's why I've looked at it as a tool to just make me better as an all-rounded person. And the same way I'm building those physical muscles, mentally I'm building coping techniques. I'm being given the tools to mentally equip myself for harder scenarios.
Yeah.
So therapy for me has been, why I say it's physically exhausting is because you've not been behind those doors ever. And you're told to sit there with something, and then they ask you questions and you're like, okay, this is the one place I can't lie. So the physical thing to say like, no, I feel inadequate in this regard. And then like, it takes a lot of mental toll. And if you do that for like an hour, I used to have a session and then have to nap. Like it would drain me.
Most people do that.
Yeah, you have to just
have to nap. Yeah,
it's like a workout. You have to just go and
you have to nap.
And Wusa, yeah. So look at it as a challenge. Like, can I go to those certain rooms that I've never been able to open with someone else? And what you'll find, well, I'm not like the know-it-all. Yeah. But what I found is that as soon as you've done that, you find that you could also identify things in other people. Not that you're a qualified therapist, but you'll see someone that hasn't been there and you'll be like, bro, have you considered? And they're like, oh my God. And you've learned it from your therapist. Yeah. And so I think it also equips you to be better for other people in your life as well. And if you're a man, and if you're a leader and you want to be able to help people around you or just be a stronger individual, gym is great, but you need to be stronger mentally as well and open those doors.
No, I agree with what you said. My brother, one of my brothers has gone for therapy extensively, like for long. And for like, it's very good. Like, when I have some conversations with him and how he identifies things, and I'm like, wow, like, bro, you're a couple years younger than me, but how are you seeing this? Or how are you reading this in a room? Yeah. You know, but then when I look at it, it's probably that.
100%. Yeah. Because you're given the tools.
Yes. Yeah. And I keep on telling like people, because his was really nice, because it didn't have to be like you sit in a room and whatever. Some days it just used to be him and the therapist, and they used to walk in Karura.
Oh. And I'd like to try that because they say that men need like a tertiary thing when opening up, right?
Yes.
So I think that would be so interesting to try. I've never tried that.
Yeah. Like even with my dad, that's what he does. So sometimes when he really wants us to get to talk about something, he'll take us for a round of golf. So the first hole, he'll be okay. He'll do an icebreaker. Then the second hole, another icebreaker.
Exactly, yeah.
By the time you're on the third hole, you've opened up to him.
You can't see the card
about why you are about why you are sad last night and everything.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
When, like with all these definitions of what it means to be a man being thrown out there, to you, like, what does it mean to be a man? Or what's your definition of a man?
That's so profound. What does it mean for me to be a man? I think that's evolving.
Yeah.
What it means to be a man right now is facing discomfort and being okay to fail in that discomfort. Because right now I'm 32, I'm in a transitioning stage of my life. And what I've realized is a lot of the time I've been ignoring negative things in my life. So right now being a man is addressing them so that I can show up to the people that need me, that either look to me for certain things, and also be there for myself in a more deeper level. So I think for me, it's that kind of honesty in the negatives. I think being a man in general now, outside of my transition, is competence, is reliability. And this only comes from if you're doing the work, right? It's competence, reliability. I think also okay with being other. Because I think a lot of the time, I don't see herd mentality as masculinity. So I think in my mind, I feel like being a man is being okay with being the black sheep in a field of white, because men lead. And if you're just going to be part of the group and you're not okay with addressing the negative, you're not okay with evolving, then you're just going to be part of the herd. And then who's really leading, right? It's just an echo chamber. So I think for me, that's why I made the platform. That's why I'm okay with being slightly different, even online. I'm okay with saying, guys, skincare is cool. Like, not just trying to put petroleum jelly on your face every day, right? So because everyone's doing it, who's going to say, let's unclog your pores? So I feel like being other is a big part of being a man. I think as well, I think love is a massive part. And I think having a relationship with what love is, in my opinion, is something that I see a lot of men struggling with. It's something that I'm trying to grasp as well, so that I can give love in different capacities, whether it's love to my friends in a healthy way, whether it's love to my future partner, whether it's love to my family. I think a lot of guys, yes, they'll lead, but they won't give that emotional category to other people. Yeah. So having all of those and trying to be well-rounded is what it means to be a man for me. And that's what I'm working on, my masculinity.
Okay. You've talked about like struggles, like what men are struggling. So one question is, what do you think is making men struggle? Because when you look at the statistics are crazy. I'm seeing like, I think just in Kenya alone, like 8 out of 10 suicides committed are by men. If you look at the world, I think it's down to now 7, but it's not drastically down,
Yeah.
So why do you think they're struggling?
I think men are struggling because of that, the thing I said that women have, where being able to be authentic. I think a lot of men struggle with authenticity. And so because they're not authentic, they look for somebody that seems authentic, and that person's still not real with themselves. An example is, I won't say the name, but like these toxic men online, that they're equating success and happiness to cars, misogyny and big houses and, that sort of lifestyle. And I think because if a guy is not honest with himself about what he wants, he'll be like, okay, he seems happy, that must be what I want. And I feel like if we had more mentors, if we had more thought leaders that were okay with vulnerability and okay with showing the full rounded element of what a man is and saying, like you say on this podcast, I've been through something, then I feel like guys will be honest with themselves, and then they'll be able to have those convos that we've been having with our friends where you're driving for all those hours and you take the pain away. And I feel like if we're addressing the pain and you're having channels to expel that pain, then I feel like now when it gets to those critical moments where you're touch and go, am I going to be a statistic or am I not? You have somebody to call rather than being like, no, everyone else seems fine. And those shallow, back to the beginning, those shallow relationships, if that's all you have and you're in your house all alone or you're on top of a building looking down, like you've got no one to call because you've not created that depth. So I feel like if we had more depth in our interactions, our friendships, and we had thought leaders that showed their vulnerability, then those moments would have a reference point. Because I think men, we need a reference point, and we don't have too many that show us the not negative, the more vulnerable side.
The good side of
Yeah.
Do you think that lack of depth in relationships comes from the lack of depth of the relationship one has with themselves? Because let me know.
No, you go. I want to know.
No, I don't want to confuse you. I want to hear yours, then I'll explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, why I was saying about being honest with yourself is to that point exactly, because I feel like when you're younger, let's say you're 9, 10, right? And let's say you play sports and you're told that if you're injured, you carry on. Like, that's pain. Pain's fine. Keep going. You go through all of your life never being able to say, like, I was in pain physically. Or if you're upset at school and you say, like, this person was saying this to me, and you're a young kid, formative years, you're a young kid, and you're not able to say, like, I'm feeling this to somebody, then every time now you're alone, you'll be like, no, I was told that if I'm feeling this, I just dust it off. So you're never actually, like we said, now when you're older, addressing those emotions. And so you're not honest with yourself. So I feel like you go through life never actually addressing any of these negative or vulnerable moments. And so now when you do get into a relationship, the muscle hasn't been exercised. You're not used to saying these things to yourself. So obviously it's going to now jeopardize any relationship you've got outside, because there's like you're like gagged by saying I'm in pain because of. And I think like to our point about the gender differences, that same girl, when they're 8 years old, they come back to their mom and they say, or their dad, and they say, Stacey said this about me in school and I felt really upset. And the mum was like, oh my God, is that how you feel? Tomorrow, go and tell Stacey how you feel. Then Stacey's like, I didn't know that made you feel this way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Then they start talking and then they become closer. Yeah. And that, it's been addressed at a very young age. So that muscle of just saying, I feel this way, you made me feel this way. That's why you have girls having these like, arguments, because they're just addressing what's upset each other. And I think guys, we don't do that. So it's so suppressed. And so you're never honest with yourself because you're not honest with other people. And I think if those formative years as well were changed so that guys can say like, James, you've upset me and I'm feeling upset because of this, rather than him saying, stop being a girl or stop being so sensitive. I think the relationship with self would be way better if it started there.
Actually, I've never thought of it like that. I'll give you what I think, but I've never thought of it like that because the other day I had an argument with my friend and I couldn't believe like the reason she was upset. I found it so shallow. But now that you said it, is they're probably used to addressing everything that they feel uncomfortable about, no matter how little it is.
Yeah.
So I couldn't understand, and I'm just like, are you actually serious? Are you actually going to argue with me about this?
Yeah. How did she react to you questioning, or like, was it invalidating?
It made her more pissed.
Because she wasn't validated,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Because for me, I could not understand it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not actually something someone should be pissed about.
Yeah.
But for her, she's like, so you're invalidating me? You get.
Yeah. Do you know what I've realized? One of my recent lessons in life is like, okay, life is a strong word. One of my recent lessons is that everyone's reality is so valid for them.
Yeah.
And although in your reality, you're like, firstly, that's not how it played out. Or secondly, why would you even think that based on that scenario? For them, the same way yours is like, it's just so obviously not a tangible emotion that should be happening. For them, it's that same level of validity to what they're feeling. So what I found in those kind of interactions is, I think, and we'll talk about this in the car with my sister and Anita, we're saying that a lot of people, they just need to be heard. They don't need to be right. They just need to be able to say it, and someone nods and goes, do you know what? That's actually valid what you're saying. That's fair. And sometimes it's like, okay, and they might understand your POV later, but it's just in that moment where they're processing from the feeling of pain to articulating it, which women are way better at doing.
Yeah.
They just need to be met with like, yeah, I get that. That's acceptable. And then maybe justifying what happened after.
Yeah.
That's one of the lessons I've learned recently.
Okay. So back to what I had asked you about the thing. I feel like 100% it's what most men go through. And I think that's why we see relationships struggling, is because the relationship one has with themselves. And I think for me, like during a point of my life, is I had probably met some of the best people ever, but those relationships struggled because I hated myself.
Okay.
And that's true. You can't give someone what you don't have.
100%.
And when I talk to a lot of young men, they don't seem at like peace or happy with themselves. So you're trying to even go into a relationship and you're not even in one with yourself, So how do you expect to give someone something that you don't have?
Yeah.
It's like squeezing an orange. If it's empty, no juice is coming out from it, know. As much as you squeeze,
You can keep trying, but yeah.
So that's one of the things that I thought about, And it's a conversation I've had with people, and I've started to see a lot of the people, especially people who've gone in therapy, they've started that journey, and they're starting to meet such amazing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the pastor that came here the other day, Pastor Angie, she said, I don't understand people who will pay more than 100K for flowers, but not pay 100K for premarital therapy.
Yeah. And I think it's where you basically place the value. I think the flowers might be a deterrent from actually having the conversation. It's like, here's flowers, let's not talk about it, Yeah. I have a question for you. I know it's your pod.
Yeah.
You said you used to hate yourself, which is a really strong word.
Yeah.
Where are you now, and what was that journey? Because I'm curious.
Wow. It was a tough journey. I think, you see, a lot of the times is sometimes you just focus on the negative and you see there's no working, then there's the comparison, then there's the heartbreak, So a few years ago, actually a couple years ago now, I probably went through a really bad heartbreak. And in the heartbreak, all I could just do was compare myself and say, oh, she did this because I wasn't good enough, or she did this because I didn't have this, or she did this because of this and this and that and that. But the truth is, I was a really bad partner.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was forgiven so many times, caught cheating so many times, forgiven so many times, But the one time that she stepped out, I'd got furiously mad about it, made me feel some type of way,
Yeah.
And then, of course, what made it worse was like it spiraled. So now, of course, I started smoking, I started drinking, and that made me also feel worse about myself.
Yeah.
And I keep on telling people that alcohol is a depressant. You get? So if you're going through a bad time and you think alcohol is going to make you feel better, it's not. It's a depressant.
Yeah.
So my life just kept on going down and down and down and down. Of course, I wasn't performing well in anything that I was doing. Then one day, of course, after fighting with my mind for so many days, I just woke up and said, fuck, I'm tired of feeling like this.
Yeah.
And then I started that like whole journey and everything.
Yeah.
And then also the thing is, when all this happened, I'd also lost like one of my closest friends to suicide. So it was just crazy time, and I was like, okay, so now what's happening, and you start asking God all of these crazy questions. But eventually now, I don't think I'm fully there, but I think it's a step. It's a journey you take,
never ends.
Yeah.
That's really profound.
How has the relationship with yourself ever been, Especially because I know there are people watching that say, that's the guy who, So,
My relationship with self, first, that's a really beautiful story, bro. That's really, and I like that you identified. It went from like, what did she do wrong to like, what did I do wrong?
No.
I love that.
Honestly, the thing is, we are so quick to blame other people, And I think even the other day, I wrote a very long post online just to say that, honestly, I've spent so many Valentines with someone, even though it meant rushing to ask someone last minute because of the fear of spending time alone. But this year I decided to spend time alone because when I look back at it, all the amazing girls that I've met, I've been the constant failure.
Right.
So I need to deal with myself before I can go out there
100%.
and try and deal with someone.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. To your question about my relationship with self, so I got it quite early in my life, which was, I feel like everything comes out of relationship, right? So I remember my initial relationship when I was in my early 20s, it was adjacent to school, right? So I remember I was going to uni, and again, my background is very, very Christian conservative house. And when you go to uni, you kind of, the leash is released, right? Yeah. So I remember fighting to get accommodation so I'd have to commute. And I finally got the keys to my apartment. I was like, nice. So everything I wanted to do in life, I finally did in this apartment, right? And what that meant is that I was studying bioscience at the time. And it meant that I wasn't going to my lectures in the first few weeks. And with bioscience and with anything to do with science, if you miss one, the formula has changed by the time you get there. So I remember going to a lesson and then I looked at the board and I knew nothing, like absolutely nothing on the board. And then I said to myself, okay, I need to change my course to something else. But because I was partying too much, I missed the window to be able to change course. So now I had to wait till another year to go back. So this is where the transformative year came, because I typically kind of got by. I think I'm relatively intelligent and I found a way socially to wiggle my way through life, which annoys my siblings sometimes. But like when school was happening, this was the thing where I was like, okay, I've got good grades to get to this uni and now I'm failing. And failure for me was like, no, I've never really failed so much. I've got by, but now it's crunch time. You have to actually attend class. And so for me taking a year out, I started looking at myself and being like, okay, why was I partying so much? And how can partying make me miss such a critical moment in my life? And then I was lucky enough to meet my very first girlfriend at the time. And I remember, this is why I talk about role models so much, because I remember now, as soon as I entered my first romantic relationship, in my head, because the contrast bias of radical behavior to what my house was, it was really apparent then. So I was like, okay, if I'm now a boyfriend, I'm 21 years old, I now found my first girlfriend, and I need to be exactly like my dad. And my dad is he's a Christian man, he's a motivated man, he's an entrepreneur. So I remember being like, okay, I need to develop myself quickly because my partner was also older than me.
Yeah.
So I remember that relationship with self came from looking at my first role model, which is my dad, and then looking at what I really wanted. And it wasn't that lifestyle of like partying and not really academically achieving. So I remember I went through a really rapid self-development journey. I don't think I was doing it for myself. I was doing it for the role of boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
But just a consequence of that is I genuinely did self-develop. And by the time I went back to uni, that year I spent working, I understood business a bit more. And so by the time I went back to uni, by my second year, I knew, because I knew what I wanted as an individual, that I didn't want to carry on public health. I wanted to do business.
Yeah.
And luckily, this is why role models are so important. My father was like, okay, cool, let me take you under my wing. and when you finish uni, we're going to go and do this business in Europe. And that self-development journey came from watching his relationship with himself, his integrity, his work ethic. And that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to mirror that because I knew how he treated my mom, how he treated my sister, me as a son. And that was the pinnacle of what a man is. So I remember I was like, okay, I need to develop myself. And because I'm spending every single day with my dad, traveling together, having deep conversations, waking up at a certain time, that's when gym became so important. That's when I don't think I watched a film for like a year, bro. Like I was just listening to podcasts, listening to all the self-development things. And just from consuming and being so locked in for that amount of time, it created like a foundation and a base where my relationship with self, even though I've been through quite a few peaks and troughs and moving country, being in other negative relationships, I've always had that kind of baseline where whatever happens, I still come back to here, which just means I can still function because yes, I'm upset, but I still have a certain value that I've put on myself because I've been able to achieve things based on that foundation I built. The principles I built then, the integrity I built then, I can still lean on now. So it came from wanting to be my dad and wanted to be a quote unquote boyfriend to somebody at the time, but it just by consequence meant that I did it for myself.
Exactly,
yeah.
No, I like that because I think now when I look at it also during that period is the first guy who I had as a role model was not the best guy. It was a young, rich guy. And like every time I'd go to his house, like, you know, after work after school and everything, like he'd have someone different.
Okay.
You get?
Yeah.
So I always was like, I could be like him. You know, I just
How
need
old
to, that time I was probably like 22, 21.
Okay. Yeah.
You get? Yeah, when I was in Strath. Yeah, like maybe 21, 22. Maybe or 19, I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I was in Strath still.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd go to his house like, you know, sometimes on the weekend, like Fridays and whatever, pre's there and everything. And I was like, damn, this guy been bringing some bodies to the crib, man. I could live like that, bro.
This is what you want, right?
No,
Exactly.
I'm Tupac, I'm a gangster, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that selling that whole mentality.
Yeah.
So I remember even the first time when I like cheated, I felt so shallow and everything. But then, you know, I think now that identity versus who you really are starts fighting and everything, you know.
Yeah.
But I think as I've grown, I've also now started to form such an amazing relationship with my father. And I think now that's become such a good role model with a baseline, you know.
Yeah.
And so how's that relationship been, you know, because I think that's also something that's so important for men.
With my father.
Yeah.
So he's just an incredible man. So like my relationship with him.
Yeah.
So my dad
Other than the haircut.
My relationship with him, I think it stems from he's the kind of guy that doesn't have to say too much. You just see what he does.
Yeah.
And then it just the action and the result, it speaks so much more volumes so that by the time you understand his mindset, he's not overtly told you like these are my principles. And if he does tell you his principles, one of the ones I'll never forget is about integrity in business. So we used to travel, and when you travel, you have to get a rental car, right? And I've told this story on my other podcast. When you travel, you get a rental car, and because the business that he was doing, it was kind of like a limitless spend. So you could get the best car from the renter if you wanted. But I remember he would always get the least expensive car. And I used to wonder, like, why are you getting the least expensive car, right? And then there was 2 airports we could have gone to, and there was maybe like a 10K difference in price, but then you'd have to drive another like hour to now, you know, get to the destination because it was slightly further out. And he would always choose the cheaper airport. And I was like, but it's 100, like, you know? And I remember I after a while of this happening a few times, I used to ask him, I was like, why don't you just, it's not even your money. Like, I'm young, I'm in my 20s. Like, if you have a limit, you'd have a limit and just spend on the nicer car. You get more comfort, you're working for them.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but you have to imagine, what if that was your money? Like, what would you want somebody that has your car to do that? And so just those kind of things, then it took me so long to ask him, but when he said it, it was just so simple. It was like, yeah, of course. And with him, all of these principles are based on faith. And so it comes from his biblical learnings, his Christian foundation. It all stems from there, but it translates in such a profound way that my relationship with him is, I feel that I only go to him for advice and for these conversations when it's critical, because the rest I can just draw from real life experiences. And so what I'm actually working on at the moment as an individual is I've realized that, yes, I have these deep conversations with my friends, And I was talking to one of my buddies the other day how, I don't know if you've thought about this as well, how like there's a finite time we have with our fathers left. And we're saying that, do our fathers know how much we appreciate what they've done? And so many unsaid things that you've taken and you've implemented and you've been inspired by. And what we realized, by the way, and this may be a challenge to all the guys that watch, is sometimes there's so many unsaid things that you assume they know. And after a conversation with my buddy, we were like, okay, after this chat, we're going to send our dad a text message and really tell him what that means. And I remember I sent the text message to my dad, and I can't remember what it said exactly, but essentially saying like, I always look up to you, and you've taught me so much. I aim to be like everything I felt, I put it in a message. And his response was like, it was so beautiful. And he was like, I've never heard you say this before, and you don't know how much I appreciate this. And so where I'm at now, because that was my initial relationship with him, where I'm at now and what I'm working on is I feel that the same way I can say a lot of things to my friends, I'm trying to have those combos with my dad and trying to break that kind of, because I think as guys as well, you don't want your dad to see weakness in you as well.
Yeah.
You want to be like the reliant son. So what I'm working on at the moment, like in real time, is I want to spend more time, because there's a finite time, speaking to my dad. I want to be calling him way more often and getting all the lessons I can before that finite time passes. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and I'm definitely not there yet. Yeah. But my relationship as of today is being more open, being more vulnerable, and I think that generation of men, they're not used to having vulnerable conversations, but they don't shut it down. Like if you open the door, they'll join you, but they're not going to open the door because they've not had that kind of practice. Yeah.
I think that's the same thing I was also telling my friend. I was telling my friend, bro, if you expect your dad to do it, he'll not do it.
Yeah.
But bro, the more you try, because you need it more than he needs it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the more you try, the more it'll come or it'll happen.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. But just try, because your dad will never try.
No. 100%. Yeah. And they're just guys too. They're figuring it out as well. Yeah, that's what I realized. Yeah.
Because I remember, like, for me, even like, I think one of the most peaceful things, or so again, heartbreak, bro. I don't know why I'm always going through heartbreak, but yeah. So there's a day. After a while, I decided to actually let go of everything that some girl had given me. So just there in the kitchen, like outside the garden, I'm burning stuff. And so my dad comes there and he's just like, you know what? I'm not even going to ask you what you're doing, but I'll just sit with you. And he just sat with me there for like 1 hour. And I think the one action that he's probably done that's made me feel most loved. Yeah.
Just the presence,
Just the presence.
Yeah.
Like, he just sat with me there for 1 hour.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing shit there. I'm just cussing out. I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
And I put music. I'm like, and he couldn't believe it. But I was like, that's crazy,
I've noticed a lot of the profound moments has just been somebody being there. Like your buddy in the car.
Yeah.
Your dad being there.
Yeah.
So this is just in real time. Like, what was it about not being alone that helped you?
I think, like, it's not even just being alone. I think, sometimes you're permanently alone with yourself, Yeah. And I think for me, I've never really, like I said, I've never really liked the relationship with myself. So I've always been a guy that's outside, that's always out there, that's there. So sometimes those profound moments mean so much to me, Like, even when I look at it, I think probably my love language is also time.
Okay,
or quality time. You get,
right, yeah.
I'm not like big on gifts or anything like that. But if you come sit on a game and watch with me, I think it means so much to me.
Yeah.
And it's probably because my parents never missed a football game, never missed a prize giving day. They never missed that. So I think it became that part of thing. Yeah. But I actually have not noticed that, but I think the profound time it's crazy.
Yeah, I think mine has been one of the things that I've realized when I'm having those moments that I need to speak. I need to vent.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I need to just say everything out loud. And one of the biggest realizations, we might be wrong, we're having this conversation every day with my friend, is sometimes like to show up for like your romantic partner or to show up for other people that maybe they need a certain level of strength from you. You need to have your boys where you can have that first reaction and offload and just speak. And then just what I've realized when I was in my worst moments is just saying everything that I'm feeling and like, I'm angry because of this, I'm angry because of this. And similar to you, few words are said, but just the action of it coming out of your mouth, you verbally said it. And I think there's a power in that. That's even in Christianity, right? They have to profess things.
Yes.
I think saying things out loud, and once you said it out loud, you're like, okay, actually, that's a bit more crazy than I thought. Now I've said it, I don't need to say it to the person that's hurt me.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest lessons as well. So I think, yours is somebody being there. Mine's just been talking at somebody. Hence why therapy is so key.
or even sometimes I think also writing works. You know, once you write, because I've also become so big on writing. So sometimes I just write, and I feel like the load has been lifted off me.
100%. You just need something to expel those feelings.
Now actually that we're talking about like fathers and whatever, like if you could change one thing about how boys are being raised today, what would you do, or what would you do differently?
I don't want it to be the same as my first answer, but I don't want to now BS to give you a different one. I think boys need to know the struggle that their role models have gone through, and boys need to know like what their dad went through, or even like their uncles or anyone they look up to. And this is why our platforms are so important, because somebody might look up to you, Keith, and if he looks up to you and says, you know, I want to be like Keith, I want to do everything Keith's done, and you start saying, oh no, when I was 21 it was horrible, or I was drinking and I felt awful about myself, and like now when they go through it, they're able to not feel like the anomaly. So I think what I would change about it is normalizing the harder parts of life without just saying the very typical things of, I just got over it, or, you know, you just have to be strong, or, you know, these things happen. I think what I would change is just having more of these kind of convos where somebody says like, no, I was in my low point and this is what happened to me. I was drinking, I didn't want to drink, or I was crying at this night and I couldn't get out of bed this day. That's the one thing I'd change, because I found myself struggling to do it. And once I broke through that like one barrier of calling, I have 3 people I call, like calling those guys, I've realized the difference it makes and how at peace I feel afterwards. And I think if so many more men had those kind of moments and had that relationship with somebody, I think it would really change the rates we're talking about. I think it'd really change how we show up for romantic partners, how we show up in business with more empathy, because I think you can empathize if someone's empathized with you, in my opinion. So I think that's what I'd give, like more of these convos, more of these normalizing struggle as men.
I know, because like when you talk about it, the reason why I actually recorded my first podcast, and even I think the first podcast I ever recorded, I think I went home after a night out, a few weeks after a night out, and I sat there with earphones, took my phone and recorded off my phone. And I remember it is called Stop Looking Up to People for the Wrong Reasons. And I remember it's because I was an alchemist. I was trying to get a drink. And then some young gentleman came up to me and he's like, oh, bro, Tupac, wow, you're so cool. You know, I wish I could be you. And I was like going through a period of my life. I didn't even want to be myself. And you know how crazy it was? I had changed all my social names to Sad Nigga Chronicles. So it was no longer Tupac Keith.
Oh, you're so dramatic.
Yeah. It was Sad Nigga Chronicles, for real. And all I used to listen to was sad music, you know.
Sorry.
No, it's true. Like, I laugh about it all the time, you know. So he comes in like, I wish I could be you. And I was just like, what the hell? So I was like, let me get my drink. Then I sat with him. And he wrote for me, like he told me a long list of things of what he thought. And I was like, bro, if you knew how like everything is. And that's why I was so now cautious about what I post, about now the conversations I had. And I was like, I never want someone to feel that a lie. Let's
100%.
I want people to say that's the truth about him. And that's why these days I come and I'm like, yep, this week was tough, you know. Like, I'm not shy to say that.
Exactly.
You get? Because sometimes I think, especially as people they look up to, we show so much good that the other side is not shown. So you even seem inhumane.
Yeah, exactly. And unattainable.
Yeah. So, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, so that's actually how I started. And that was the first episode I ever did. Just talking to my talking through my phone.
And did you find that there was so much more profound convos you're having, even with people in your life? Because they're like, oh, Keith's talking about it.
Yeah. These days, I think I don't have that many to my close friends, I feel like a lot of them come to me to talk.
Right, yeah.
You get, because they're like, even if I tell Tupac, like he goes and tells everyone about how he's feeling. What's worse than what he's been through?
Exactly,
So I go through that a lot.
I think it speaks to the problem we're literally saying, like, if one guy normalizes theirs, then other men will follow, right? I think the beautiful thing that you just said about somebody coming to you and not looking up to your heroes, or was it? Not looking up to somebody, the first episode you did. I'm in that current struggle right now. And I was talking to my sister about this morning. We went for a walk. And when I built my platforms, like the podcast and myself as an individual content creator, I never wanted to create the illusion of there's no struggle. So I found that on the pod, I was so able to reference things and talk about things. But then I found that like even on my Instagram or the kind of message I was getting was people having that illusion that everything is perfect with me. And so the transformation stage that I'm in at the moment is taking it from theory, maintaining my privacy, but also practically talking about what I'm going through, because I'm currently going through one of the like toughest transitions of my life and dealing with the most that I've dealt with mentally.
Yeah.
And I was saying to my therapist yesterday, like, this is a pocket of time that I've had I've had some struggles in my life, but relative to that, this is the hardest maybe 6 months. And I really don't want to get through these 6 months, be back to my norm or my evolved version and not have shared in real time what's happening. So currently what I'm playing with is the idea that you're saying where while you're in the struggle, rather than the guy coming to you, an alchemist, and saying, I look up to you, and you saying, yeah, thanks, bro. You literally saying like, no, I'm going through some stuff. I'm trying to find a way of also using my platform to do that with maintaining my privacy at the same time, but also giving some sort of value, because I love the messages of like, oh, bro, I love what you're doing. But I also want the messages that they resonate with something I've said that was a struggle. And I'm trying to dispel that illusion that everything's good with me. Yeah.
No, I think it's really, 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 really important, you know. But as we get to the kick it section, if you had a conversation today here with 13-year-old Eli, what would you tell him about life?
There's two quotes that I've lent on.
Yeah.
I don't know if lent is the right word, that I lean on at the moment. And one of them is I saw it on a Tom Hanks interview. Very simple phrase, which is, this too shall pass. And for me, I feel like in my worst moments, that's been the one thing that I've had to lean on, because otherwise I'm like stuck in this bubble and I can't see the way out. But if I keep repeating that's myself, even when I don't feel it, that's really helped. So I'll just encourage him when he's 13 to just know there's a lot of life ahead of you, but the good is temporary and the bad is temporary. So, which is to the second quote, which is, impermanence is the only guarantee that we have. And those two things I try to, not successfully, I try to maintain when things are great. Like when I'm loving life, I'm on a holiday. Like recently I was on a holiday with one of my buddies and we're on the beach, we're loving life. Like it was amazing. And I remember saying to myself, like, this is temporary. Enjoy it, but like, this is not the norm. I remember when I moved into my new place, as soon as when I opened the door and I went and like, I said a prayer around the place, and I said to myself, this is a really good achievement. Like, you're very happy with the area. Like this is big for you. But I remember saying to myself, like, at some point you're going to cry in this apartment. And at some point you're going to have the best time in this apartment. And I've been there now for coming up to 2 years. And it's been exactly that. So I think I'll tell him, like, firstly, enjoy being 13, because the problems relative to what happens is what? If I could go back. I'll tell him, like, enjoy this pocket of time, because what you have to deal with is only going to get worse, but you're only going to get stronger and get the tools to deal with it. But I'll tell him to remember those two things. Impermanence is the only guarantee that we have, and this too shall pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other than ManTalk, what's a podcast or book every man should read or listen to?
ManTalk. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
That's interesting. One thing men should listen to. Okay. I think an individual that I think guys should listen to if they're trying to get into the mindset of self-development, growth, is Jordan Peterson. I recommend him highly. I've listened to him for quite a while now. I'll say listen to Diary of a CEO if you're trying to develop yourself in... trying to find what the word is. If you're trying to develop yourself when it comes to career, when it comes to business, I think drawing on those virtual mentors that they have access to and now they give it to you for free is something that is really, really key. So Diary of a CEO, Jordan Peterson, specifically for men, the Just to Kick It podcast.
Thanks.
And that's what I'd say.
What's a habit that you think, other than also therapy and gymming, what's another habit that you think has really transformed your life?
I was going to say gym. I would say prayer.
Oh.
I would say prayer. And the thing is, I told you I've gone through like my toughest time.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a 4-day period where I was on a trip for work. And those 4 days, I've never been that low. And I would say every hour, I had to pop somewhere and say a prayer. And that's literally the only thing that got me through that. If you're not religious, the exercise of prayer, I think, is verbalizing what you're feeling. And the addition to that is having somebody you're verbalizing it to, right? Which is a higher power. But I think if you're not religious, just verbalize it to yourself, to the mirror, to the room with no one there. I think that exercise is so key because back to being honest with yourself, it only happens when you articulate something. And there's a power in articulating it because if it's in your mind, if you're not writing it down, it just needs to be said. So if you're religious, pray to whoever you pray to, but that's one thing you can lean on when there's nothing else.
Okay. What's one unpopular opinion you have?
This is not profound. So you know when like there's a plan, right? And I'm really passionate about this, Keith. When there's a plan and there's like 6 people and you're like, okay, on Saturday we're going here. When everyone gets to the house, right, for prees or where they're just getting excited, they start playing music. It never gets better than the thought of how good the night is going to be, in my opinion. And I just need guys to grasp this. Like the anticipation of what tonight could be, like really enjoy those moments. Because I found that in every time I've had a really, really good evening or good event, it's never been as good as the excitement we've had talking about it. It's never been as good. So like, don't show up late. Enjoy the anticipation. And I think guys think that when we get to the venue, it's going to be better. And sometimes it is, but it's never as good as when you're with the key people before it's loud and there's so many people there. Those are when the best jokes are made. Those are when the best memories are made because later on you might not remember them. But like, that's my unpopular opinion. It's never as good when you get there as when you're getting ready.
As we wrap this up, I don't know if there's anything I missed to ask you.
Or
if there's anything you wanted to say.
I feel like, firstly, it's thank you. I think it's so rare in this environment to find guys that are happy being in this pocket of space, to have these convos. And I really value every platform that is the opposite of toxic masculinity. And this is one of those platforms. So thank you for even thinking of me to have this kind of convo. And one of the beautiful things I think we have with the internet is you don't know where the convo is going to go. You don't know when it's going to be watched and who it's going to be watched by. And you don't know who it's going to transform. So I'd want to say it to you as just a big thank you. And if there's ever a moment that you're doing this pod or there's questions about it or there's hesitations, you have my number. And the journey that I've walked with my co-host, trying to build a positive platform, has had so many hidden struggles that a lot of guys that want to build a platform sometimes don't realize. So yeah, if there's ever any times where you're like, how do I navigate this? Please let me know, because we were reflecting the other day with my co-host and we've been doing our podcast for 6 years now and we funded it for 5.5 of those. Yeah. And to do that, you need somebody to talk to. And I don't know if you have somebody to talk to on a production level, on a motivational level, but yeah, it's thank you. And I'm here on a production level to talk about things as well. And please keep doing what you're doing because it's needed.
Thank you so much, bro. I really appreciate you taking your time and finally having this. Of course, I know the conversation will happen again and again and again, you know. Of course. Yeah, so thank you so much, bro. And I pray that God blesses you in whatever you do.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
For those of you tuning in from home, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Just to Kick It is a Blessing podcast. Remember that no matter where you are, no matter what you go through, Just to Kick It is truly a blessing. Goodbye and see you next week.
For the boomer, yeah, singing no weapon forming against me shall prosper.